I think we're on stage.
We are on stage. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar to go over the 6 strategies for RevOps success in 2025. We are joined today by an amazing panel. Stephanie Martin, VP, GTM and Revenue Operations at X Factor. Jackie Lee, Head of GTM and Founder, Activate the Magic. And last but not least, Stephen Diorio, bestselling author of Revenue Operations. Audience, be sure to drop your questions in the chat as we will be taking those live. Also, the webinar will be recorded and will be emailed to all of our registrants post-event. So be sure on the lookout for that to make sure you share. And over to you all.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to bring up my slides here and just do a quick introduction about myself. My name is Stephanie Martin, and I am running go-to-market and revenue operations at X Factor. I've been in revenue operations and sales operations of various functions for the past 18 years, primarily in enterprise software companies and cybersecurity companies of various sizes and stages. And I am a perpetual student in everything revenue operations. It is, for sure, a passion of mine, and very excited to be here talking with my friend and a mentor of mine, Stephen Diorio. Stephen?
That's a little scary. I'm Stephen Diorio. I literally wrote the book on revenue operations. It was painful. I've been doing commercial transformation for 35 years. I've helped hundreds of companies transform their go-to-market to grow faster and more profitably and scalably. I was perhaps silly enough to become the first sales and marketing technology analyst at Gartner way before its time, but really after decades and thousands of conversations and projects, I think time is right to take a systems approach to growth, and I'm excited to share what we know in this session.
And I'm Jackie Leahy. I'm actually a former kindergarten teacher who pivoted to tech sales in 2016. At my third tech startup, I was at Link Squares here in Boston, and I was hired to build the BDR program team. And we went from 350K ARR to 9 million in 2 years. And in that journey, I became the accidental Salesforce admin and ended up completely falling in love with it and completely falling in love with Stephen and Stephanie are talking about, sort of the systems and the way by which we tackle the world. I've been on the consulting side since I left, and I started my own fractional RevOps agency a little over 2.5 years ago. So I'm excited to come and add some flavor about what I've been seeing on the ground, in the trenches, for more of the earlier stage startups. So typically I'm working with companies under 10 million, they come in at 1 or 3 or 4 million, and just when like the tires are starting to shake. So I'm excited to contribute from what I'm seeing in that area.
Great. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump in. I just wanted to say a quick thing about, X Factor and why we're here today. Growth is on everyone's mind here. I think we're all wondering how we are going to move the needle in the direction of growth for the companies that we're working with. And, we're here talking about, how to drive that growth by bridging the gap between, the guesswork gap between goals and the actual achievement of those goals. There are a lot of complexities involved in both the technique, but also technology that we can help, to untangle and talk about today. So with that, I'm going to turn the first slide over to Stephen to set us up for the first part of our discussion here.
Sure, you'll find out pretty quickly. I'm the nerd of this group, but I've got a lot of research, and my job is to tell you first the why. Anything we talk about, we're going to tell you the what you should do and give you resources, including a book and a benchmark model for how. But let's start with this slide. Why do you even care about this webinar? Well, we've worked with hundreds of RevOps leaders like yourself, surveyed them, as you see here, and they hit a wall. 90% of the good things that RevOps is supposed to do, and that is drive scalable, profitable revenue, create firm value, and create career growth, quite frankly, for everybody on this call, requires two things that people often ignore: teamwork across operations and team, and equally important, change. And what we see is people dive into the deep end of the RevOps pool with little more than a mission statement and a journey map. And they lack some fundamental things: buy-in across the organization, a common purpose or incentives. In a perfect world, everyone is compensated on what you care about, a business case. Everything else in the organization has a rock hard business case that the CFO buys into and funds. Growth, less so. In fact, the CFO doesn't even understand the math of how the organization grows. And of course, cross-functional teamwork, not because people are bad, but everyone's got to keep the business running and is so entrenched in what they're doing that you as a RevOps person really has to be either charming, persuasive, or a dictator to make that happen. So without change, you're not going to achieve the career growth, revenue, and business impact you're looking for. We want to take that head on and give you 6 practical things you can do to create that change. Stephanie.
Yeah. I mean, the good news here is that RevOps is a very strategic hire for companies, right? But the end result or the, revenue operations itself is not a means to an end. So you can't just go in thinking, okay, yes, we're putting a revenue operations team into place, or we're, hiring a revenue operations leader, we're good to go. So what Stephen's saying is that it then requires a lot of additional, discussion, alignment, buy-in, and a willingness to change in order for that role to really come to fruition and deliver what it needs to do. Personally, I have, in a few different roles, experienced some challenges around this, just because, it was that mindset. It was like, a RevOps is good, but yet there wasn't the alignment, or, I had to empower myself or give myself the right remit so that I can make sure to make advances in, the agenda that I wanted to put into place. So I don't know, Jackie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's probably why I went external and went to the consulting side, just because when I was in-house, you really serve at the pleasure of whoever's budget your comp rolls up to. And it's really hard to balance being a steward of the revenue engine with keeping my job and my health insurance, right? So like balancing, that's a bit of a balancing act. And Stephen, what you're talking about with like charm, persuasion, charisma, there's that end, or there's the dictator end. And I think there's ups and downs of both. But the hard part is getting alignment across the team on what we're even trying to do. Like, what is the definition of ARR? Sometimes will throw off the team. So these two things are absolutely a huge piece if you're looking to create impact in the organization or organizations you're with, and growing your career, because that's the most important part.
Great. All right. Well, this is one near and dear to my heart. Stephen, why don't you talk about this one?
So we benchmark revenue operations and help build financial models. As a consequence, we talk to thousands of people, probably like the people on this call. What they'll tell me is this: I thought I was being hired or promoted or recast to lead commercial transformation. And what I wind up doing is playing whack-a-mole, putting out fires and things like that. And I think that is a big issue. Almost half of RevOps people said opportunity overload is holding them back. And what do we mean by that? RevOps is such a rich area to create value that there are literally hundreds of smart initiatives, investments, actions, and projects you could take on. There is no way you can pursue about those things. Unfortunately, 90% of what RevOps people do every day is run the business, keep the wheels moving, and put out fires. And so if you, a fraction of, creating a sales forecast or just keeping the business running and getting the plans out on time and the reports out on time, none of that is going to create value, drive scalable growth, transform your growth engine, and quite frankly, advance your career. In our experience, a good RevOps person who knows finance and can use data is in the boardroom within weeks. But by the same token, the field is maligned by the perception that it's a back office function that isn't touching revenue, largely because of what Jackie and Stephanie said. There are no metrics. So unless you define the agenda and define and elevate your role and the initiatives that create scalable growth, the moles are going to define your agenda.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on it there, Stephen, that I think in most cases it is up to us to pull ourselves out of it and look for ways to be more strategic and start to put some priorities into place so that you can, allocate your time in the right ways. Because if you don't do that, you'll just stay in this trap of like day-to-day firefighting or just keeping the lights on by running the everyday operating rhythm, like the forecasting or the QBRs and things like that. And I'm not saying there's not a need for that. There certainly is. It's important to have rigor and discipline around some of the operating rhythm stuff, but to really pull yourself out of this mole whacking situation, it is really important to be more strategic and think about what are the things that are more needle moving than others.
Yeah, I think I kept on hearing be more strict, like when I was in-house or even early on as a consultant, and like, yes, this cartoon was precisely my life, right? And it's so hard, like that sounds way easier that said than done. Until recently, I realized that strategy is literally just prioritizing what you're going to spend your resources on. That's it. That's it. Like that is strategy. I thought I was missing an MBA course. No. So what I love to do now is take it to the simple lifetime value to CAC. How? If you can get that ratio 3-to-1 minimum, 10-to-1 goal, 30-to-1 is your printing money, and using that to basically be like, okay, Rob, I know you really need that checkbox. And let's take it back and let's look at what we're actually doing. Will this move that? No. Right. So, but there's always some whack-a-moling you got to do to earn your street cred, your reputation, to kind of like prove your value, especially to the squeaky wheels, whether you're in-house or not. So if you're in the trenches and you're like, okay, I'll be more strategic, what the F does that mean? I would say figure out the one thing that is blocking the cash flow and the recurring impact from scaling. What's that one thing? Is it before the sales close? Is it after? Is it before they come in and lead or after? Like get down to where it is, and 80% of your time focus there, and the rest give yourself a little whack-a-mole budget so you can make people happy in the meantime.
Well, what a great segue into the rest of this conversation, because we're going to get really into that, the goal setting. So here they are. This is how you do it.
Well, so there are 6 things. There's a white paper on this. We're going to give you resources and everything you need, but let me sum them up for you, tell you what we're going to tell you, and then we're going to tell you. Jackie just said it. RevOps is one thing. What is your North Star? It can only be one thing. Is it ARR? Is it CAC? The math of growth leads you to one thing. Yeah. Second, what are the 3 to 5 big boulders or drivers that are going to drive that growth? There are 46, specifically 46 drivers of growth that are proven to be causal of future cash flow and value. Not all of them are going to be relevant or equally important in your organization. And even if they were, you lack the bandwidth and the support and teamwork to really go after them. So what are those 3 to 5 big levers that are going to drive the growth? Then it's the math of growth. What matters? I think Jackie just laid out some math. You calculate ARR, you calculate firm value. Most CFOs don't understand the math of growth. Most people measure what's easy, not what's creating value. Hard stop there. Let's talk about that. Measurement. There are 12 reasons why people are horrible at measurement. We're going to show you how to build a dashboard, and it's a bad word, that actually helps you implement those KPIs. And Stephanie will talk about that. We'll talk about the remit and the team having one throat to choke who's accountable for achieving those metrics. And then we're going to talk about the notion of the scientific method. This is not a big bang. This is not a $1 in, $50 out. This is a process for continuous improvement. And if you don't do those first 5 steps and apply the scientific method, take a guess, write that guess down, try something, measure, adjust. You're just going to be spinning your wheels. So that's the whole presentation, Jackie, Stephanie, and we can dig in more. But I just wanted to kind of foreshadow. And those things sound trivial. I guarantee you, your CFO does not understand the math of growth in your business. And it's very difficult to choose from 50 smart projects, the top 3.
Yes. All right, great. Well, let's dig right in and start with the first one.
Can I just kind of jump in here, because Jackie was all over this. What is your North Star?
Yeah.
If you want to have 2, go to your CFO, CRO, or your CEO and say, which one of these are we navigating against? Because as Jackie pointed out, it's just an equation. Let me tell you a story. We benchmarked 50 executives at a really well-run firm. This firm had 90% market share, 20 products to sell to those clients, and the average product penetration was 2. Do you know what 60% of the executives in that company said their North Star was? Customer acquisition. In what universe would that be your North Star? I don't know who's doing that math, but it's shocking. You think that people are from the top down are organized, but you've got to really challenge and get your leadership to say, this is the North Star. Because as Jackie and Stephanie pointed out, you can do the math and do the KPIs and break down what it's going to take to meet that North Star. But there's only one winning. There's only one definition of winning. And I think it's so silly, but it's so important.
Great.
And when you successfully unify the different departments and, oh my God, the executive leadership team, and maybe even the board, if you're all on the same North Star, like, pack it in, go home. Your job is complete. Like, nothing can stop you at that point.
Right, because I feel like that's the way the puzzle pieces start to fall into place.
Yes.
Because then you have a why for everything, and it's easier to get, your initiatives going and the teamwork and the alignment when everybody understands what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
And you build some momentum around it, right?
Yep.
Like, everyone's pitching in, CS as an idea for how sales could, but everyone's on the same. And so it's almost like if someone comes in with a random request that is smart, but it's like, yo, that's not what we're doing right now, Rob. Poor
Right.
Rob's getting the
I tell you, I feel I'm anachronistic, but it's like that cowboy Curly in the movie City Slickers.
Yeah. When
they're asking him, what's the meaning of life? And his answer is, it's one thing. But it's your one thing, so you figure it out.
Yeah.
It sounds silly, but as Jackie and Stephanie point out, it's non-trivial.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's find out what comes next here.
All right. So this one is where I really nerd out. Nobody understands the math of growth in their business. There are hundreds of high return investments you can make under the rubric of RevOps. Why? Because you own the largest financial assets in the business, the data, the processes, the channels. In fact, RevOps technically manages half or more of the value in the business when you add up the value of those things relative to the treasurer, who only manages maybe 4% of the value of the business, facilities, factories, inventory, supply chain. The commercial assets in the business are the largest financial assets in the business. You own them. And as Jackie pointed out, getting a return on those assets is all you need to do. There are 50 to 100 projects you can do. There are 46 levers, which we've documented in a white paper. Email me. And the trick is, which ones are going to pay off? So the vertical axis, how do I determine whether cleaning up my data is going to be better than training? It's going to be better than automating in aspects of sale, the vertical axis. And the horizontal axis, just how realistic, just how much change is it going to take to do that? And if you can plot everything you're doing, and these are very representative of what people are doing, and circle those top 3 or 4 or 5 in the upper right-hand corner, easy to implement, high impact, you're ahead of the curve. But nobody has the math to do the vertical axis, and no one is asking the question, just how much change is it going to take? I know I could do it, or left alone, I could do it, but I need other people to come with me. So if you can make this plot, we have a benchmark that can help you do this plot, but do it yourself. Yeah. That's what you need to do. And it can only be 3 to 5, because who has the bandwidth to do more than that?
Right.
And on that, I'd probably say, especially if you're under 10 million and you're like going for that go-to-market fit, pick one thing. And this is super helpful because it validates our instincts, right? Like, we look at the revenue as a system and we know where the key constraint is, because that's who we are. And going to fix that your impulse, that instinct, you're right on. And so many times people want to do something because it works somewhere else, or it's hot, it's the new darling. And the toughest thing is to get people disciplined on doing that one thing. And usually if it's more, better, or new, if you could do something, everyone wants to do new or better, but 9 out of 10 times what's actually going to make impact is just more of what you're already doing.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is like, you've got a Maserati race car, and it's firing on 2 of 12 cylinders. And if you could just get it firing on 3 cylinders, you're killing it. And the other news is, I benchmark organizations. Nobody is firing on all their cylinders. Nobody. You don't have to outrun the bear.
No.
If you're firing on half your cylinders, you're probably best in class. So let's not pretend that there's some race car out there running circles around you.
I love that. Because when I first kind of stepped my toe into RevOps, I felt like I should already know how to do things. Or like there was some weird like moral shame about like the hygiene of my data. What? Let yourself off the hook.
Yes.
And that could be one of the highest return investments in your business, by the way.
Yeah. It's a journey for sure. Okay. Well, speaking of that.
Well, just to stay with the anachronistic theme, I'm a bit of a Led Zeppelin fan, and I do believe that the greatest rock song in history is Stairway to Heaven. So we built the Stairway to Heaven financial model. There's a point here, though. We work with the Sales Management Association, and I have seen business cases for commercial transformation for decades. And Stephanie gets all angrier on this. They're built on time savings and productivity. You know, that time could go to the golf course or to more selling. But at the end of the day, there are 5 layers or more of value. Yes, productivity matters, and that should justify initiatives, but it doesn't. And boy, oh boy, it's hard to measure and monetize. But revenue impact, attribution, doing the math to show their impact on hard revenues and margins. But more importantly, return on investments. Jackie said something important. The modern commercial model is a digital, data-driven, capital-intensive team sport. Yeah. And if you look at growth resource allocation, it's not Mad Men, it's not advertising and human beings, it's infrastructure, it's CapEx, it's investment. Nobody is thinking about the notion of investment, and it's also assets, know-how, knowledge, channel, intellectual property, data, insights. Insights turn to codified knowledge. If you could pull the lever on getting that investment working harder and monetizing those assets, the business case for RevOps goes through the moon. The problem is nobody can do this math None of this stuff is reported according to FASB by the CFO in management accounting, operating accounting, annual report. You can't even see those assets. They're called goodwill. We've built a financial model and a benchmark model that'll teach you the math of growth. This is where I really nerd out. But at the end of the day, if your chief financial officer and your financial metrics and your reports to Wall Street aren't communicating how you are impacting half the assets in the business, then we're leaving a lot of money on the table, and you're sub-optimizing your commercial model. So there's a financial model, there's a paper, there's a benchmark. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. Chapter 11 of the book, we'll email it to you, but you've got to master this math of growth. And quite frankly, I've been told by so many people, if you understand math and can use data, you're going to be in the boardroom in a matter of weeks. And that's the magic of RevOps.
Yeah. Yeah. This slide resonates with me so much, but I also just want to empathize with maybe the audience who's feeling a little overwhelmed by this, because, the higher you go up in that staircase, the harder these things are. And there's not a lot of great, roadmaps or instruction manuals on how to do this stuff. Stephen's company, of course, has, some great resources to help with it. And, luckily, we're applying some technology to the equation to help companies with this, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Jackie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if you're under 10 million world, like I am, let your eyes just kind of blur and just read the headline, develop KPIs, right? So when you've found your key constraint, let's say it's the handoff from BDR to AE, classic, right? When you found that, develop a KPI or 3 KPI. I like 3 KPIs that will measure that. And if a KPI doesn't change behavior, then it's not a KPI. Like if a KPI moves and everyone says, cool, but it doesn't change anything, then it's not really a KPI. So let's say you want to do an input, something that the rep or the end person has complete control over, something like cold call, like something that they can do no matter what, a cold call or something like that. An early indicator. So whatever it is the key thing. If they do this, chances are they'll get that North Star where we're going. We'll have that great handoff. Measure that, and then what's the biggest indicator that that's happening? Put a KPI on that. So I was doing, like for me personally, for Activate the Magic, Super Meta, creating awareness. So I did LinkedIn profile views, to meetings booked, to new deals closed, right? So input, early indicator, and then actual KPI.
Jackie's just nailed it. There's a great case study in Forbes on AT&T where the CEO of the B2B side of AT&T said, I'm going to align the math of growth value to the job of the sales rep to their compensation. The biggest motivator, you want to change behavior, change the way people get paid. Now, you've got to have a pretty robust KPI to do that. But in the book and in Forbes, I was really impressed. If you can marry, because I think Jackie said some important things. What do I control in my job? How am I paid? How does that roll up to the way it creates value? If you can interlock those things, then you're going to get that change, because the best measurement is the one you pay people on.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're about to get into, some of the hardships of why, this is difficult for teams.
And
I can
Stephanie can give a dissertation here.
Yes.
And Stephanie's platform solves these problems. But let's face it, people stink at measuring. The first reason is they don't understand the math of growth. I've beaten that drum, but we got the 7 S's. There's slow, static, stale, single-threaded data from silos and systems from across the organization, and lots of excuses around that. Spreadsheets are evil. If you're still measuring on spreadsheets, they're just too slow. Most organizations can't even get their territory and quota plans out fast enough in order for the sales year because they're doing it on spreadsheets. There are 36 assumptions that go into the revenue plan. Most people don't even write them down, much less put them in a system in a spreadsheet. And they don't run scenarios. Turning those assumptions can create all sorts of different outcomes. So spreadsheets are horrible. Single-threaded data. Most of the people in the RevOps space say, oh, well, let's take stuff out of Gong or engagement system or CRM, and we'll create a dashboard. We got boxes of dashboards tied to one system. There's no way you're going to address all the levers of growth from one system. And you've got to have a platform and a common sense, low impact way to start to assemble this. And I think Stephanie has got this notion of a revenue operating center that can get you on that journey. You don't have to connect everything day one, but you've got to have an approach that scales. Spreadsheets don't scale. BI in a silo doesn't scale. I think what Stephanie has, this notion of a revenue operating center, is a really smart way to go about this.
Yeah. And look, we are all resource constrained here. Okay. I don't know of anybody who feels like they have enough time in their day to get stuff done. So like piling on top of these 12 things is the fact that we don't have a ton of time to throw around to doing a lot of this and, detailed work and advanced level metrics. But the metrics without math are just metrics, right? And I'm guilty of having done that myself, where I have great dashboards. Okay. Not too many people are looking at them on a daily basis because it's hard to make sense of like what that data is telling me. So unless I understand how that conversion rate is going to, translate to how many leads I need, that's important stuff to know. And that's hard to get from your traditional BI tools and metrics. So we're applying some math here to this equation, and also helping people with limited time and resources do some of the more sophisticated math stuff that we need to do to get this done.
Yeah, it turns out math is actually really important, and statistics ended up being really important. And so I have regrets.
Yeah. Right. All right. So let's talk about, how we're going to try to cut through some of this, because as Stephen said, traditional BI tools, spreadsheets, and the way in which we're working is not fast enough, and it's not sophisticated enough. That has been my experience. I'm sure others can identify with that. And in the world of AI these days, it's due for a change. So running the revenue operations and doing a lot of this measurement and wrapping around strategic things and identifying what your big initiatives are, like, you need help with that. And you need help through a more sophisticated system that can give you those metrics in the context of your plan, of your annual operating plan, that can give you KPIs based on mathematical calculations. So doing the math for you, and using real-time data that changes every day, by the way. We're also able to apply predictive analytics to the system to project where, given the typical run rate of things, where you're likely going to end up. And that goes beyond just simple opportunity forecasting. I see this a lot where, we are very focused on what the current pipeline is doing and opportunities that we know about and sales reps that are already on board. And we very much focus on what they're doing, and maybe not enough on some of the other things that may be indicators that we may or may not be likely to hit our growth targets, like capacity and like lead flow and demand generation and things like that. So time for some technology innovation, and that's what X Factor here is about.
Could I just say a couple things, Stephanie?
Sure.
Because look, here's the red hole. What I like about this revenue operating center that Stephanie's talking about, it solves 4 problems. 1, systems integration. It's easy to plug in data from many sources. And obviously there's a lot of people out there who know it's hard and make a lot of money by connecting those things. There's a perception that connecting is expensive. And I think, Stephanie's platform dispels that. Second, there's a single threaded trap. I've seen so many people say, well, I'm going to run my sales metrics out of CRM, which is wonderful. but also everybody wants their platform and their engagement data to drive the metrics. And software people are motivated to do that. And if you can't get where you want to go with a single threaded story, you've got to have an environment that's open, that can weave information from different pieces. If you're using a sales engagement platform or a CRM platform as your backbone, then you're by definition going to be single threaded, and that's a rat hole. Spreadsheets are death. There are just too many variables. It's too slow. There are too many stakeholders, and there are too many scenarios that you can run. Wharton did a study that if I just turn the dials on my assumptions, I could grow twice as profitably, twice as fast, twice as cost effectively, sometimes with fewer people, just by changing assumptions. Spreadsheets break. And then BI in a silo, it's fine. But if you're exporting data to load it into BI in a silo, you try to do the work back and the update, and that's a trap. So there's the systems integration trap, the single threaded trap, the spreadsheet trap, and the BI trap. That's how we do those things. I think, what Stephanie's saying is walk one step at a time, connect the dots over time, and build, test, and learn. I really like how easy this is and how scalable it is.
Agreed. Okay, well, let's talk about number 5, the team.
I'm going to keep it short. Growing a business is a digital, data-driven, capital-intensive team sport where the team that creates the most dots wins. There are 46 specific drivers that are proven academically to be causal of future growth and cash flow. No single executive in your organization owns more than 48% of them. The head of sales only controls 30 some odd percent of the levers of growth. Marketing surprisingly controls most of them. Customer success has some of the most important levers, but not all of them. Product as well. So you're never, ever going to do this alone, and you've got to do it as a team. You need one person with one throat to choke, with the remit to be accountable for that dashboard. And I think Jackie said something important. By definition, the budgets and the assets that fuel growth have to come from different organizations. It's not going to be like advertising. It's not going to be like sales. No one person is ever going to control all those resources. The best organizations pool those resources in a portfolio effort, but have one person who's accountable for driving return on those assets. So that's my big thing. Now, whether you do that through a dictatorship, I'm sure Jackie's a dictator, or a coalition, or I love this notion of a RevOps superstar who's kind of like Radar O'Reilly and MASH from the 70s, man, who's pulling all the strings and actually running the thing from behind the curtain. Doesn't matter. I've seen it all work. But you have to have one person who sees the big picture, one throat to choke against this dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a note about, so I've been fired so many times. That's why I had to start my own company. So coming from like that perspective, also focus where are you in your career chapter? Are you in if you're at a company and you see a lot of opportunity for you to learn skills and you don't see the opportunity to actually connect the dots as a team sport, if you don't have that leverage, if you don't see a path in, opt for the skills, right, for this chapter, because the fish rots from the head. So don't do what I did and try to get everyone on the same team if you're not at the top or if you don't have the listening at the top.
Jackie, can I build on that? It's just, guys, this is your career.
It's your career, baby.
People are the smartest people I know. What do you want for your career? I hear from executives that RevOps is the farm system for the next generation of leaders in the business. I'm assuming that's where you want to go. You don't want to be fired, and you certainly don't want to be spending the rest of your life whacking moles. So I think that's why this is so important.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to create value, but you got to take charge of it.
You got to take charge.
That's exactly what kind of the without knowing that I was doing that, I did that. Right? And early in my career, I thought to myself, as I was looking around to see what, the things were that needed fixing or that needed to be optimized. And if I didn't know how to do that, I took it upon myself to become the expert in that. for example, like compensation. I wanted to be able to understand compensation plans inside and out. So I took the time to research that, read as much as I could, talk to some experts on it, actually, take a stab at designing plans myself.
Yeah.
And then, felt like I had mastered that. And that helped me build my, skill set and my
Yep.
tool set for the next role. And so to your point, Jackie, there's folks that feel like, okay, well, I'm not in a position right now that I can be, the leader of this, sort of effort that feels a little bit like boiling the ocean, but do what you can do in your current role, and look at those things with a critical eye and think about what are the things that you need to grow and learn about yourself, to take you to the next step. The other piece of advice that I would have, and somebody used this analogy with me years ago, but I'm going to modernize it a little bit, because I was just watching the Saturday Night Live documentary on the cowbell, the cowbell sketch where Will Ferrell is, in the Blue Oyster Cult, going crazy on the cowbell. Like, you need to be the guy with the cowbell sometimes and just doing it. You might just be the cowbell person, but if you do it the best and, you make it, you become the center of, the whole thing. So that's what I will say. And no matter what role you're in, just, more cowbell for sure.
I love that, Stephanie. Yes. Like if you have something in you that's like really you're curious about something, like it's your chapter to like really build your career, if that's your chapter, like go after it.
Yeah.
Like don't listen to people who are like, oh, you're working too much. It's a chapter. What do you care about? What's lighting you up? Because let me tell you, when getting really excited about something that is important, you might not win that battle, but people are watching you.
Yeah.
People are watching you from like externally, whoever the software that you're wanting to use or something like that, that person's watching you. People across the organization, the CFO, who doesn't really talk much, you're being watched. And those are the people who actually end up making huge advances in your career later on. So get excited, do the thing, and know what chapter you're in. Yeah.
Great. All right. And I want to make sure we have time for questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going
to go super fast.
Number 6.
I had to put Mr. Spock in here, but my big message is organizations. Revenue operations is a system for growth. A system is a set of complex things that work together to create an outcome. Growth. You have a financial system. You have a supply chain management system. Your factory is a system. Your operations are a system. And we use Six Sigma in our operations. Total quality management has created billions of dollars of value in the supply chain. Lean manufacturing has tremendously cut the cost of building things. And finance people have put in ERP to optimize their financial management, creating millions of dollars. There's always been excuses why we couldn't apply the scientific method and the principles of continuous improvement to sales and marketing in a world where most of sales is digital, data-driven, and systemic. I think it's time. And so the message here is apply the scientific message. Take a guess, write it down, put it into Stephanie's system, take an action, any action, measure that action, adjust and repeat and share. And so, the modern revenue cycle is a series of dependent events that span every organization in the company. Jackie said it. This is about resource allocation.
Yep.
Selling is resource and capital intensive. Strategy is just allocating those resources and assets. And every resource is just like a factory, and the machines in the factory are subject to statistical fluctuations. And if you don't believe me, look at revenue quota attainment across your sales force and tell me what that bell curve looks like. So this is apply the scientific method. If we didn't do that, we'd be gathered around a campfire in skins right now. So let's apply it to sales and marketing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the chess analogy hits home with me so much here because there are so many combinations. It requires strategic thinking steps ahead, and understanding, how all the different pieces move around. And so this is hard. This is hard stuff, and there's a lot of variables, but there's ways to go about it. And you're right. Sometimes it is about trying it, measuring it and adjusting and being agile and willing to take those chances. Okay. Another great cartoon.
Yeah. So guys, let's get to questions, but you asked about the how. If you send us an email, we'll send you the right chapter of the book, the financial model, all this free. Any of this information. We actually have a case study in Forbes or in a book, a white paper, an analysis. But I think the one thing is, if you want to make that scatter plot and take all your initiatives and look at all 46 levers in the business, drivers in the business, and score them, we have an MRI that you can, it's a self-assessment, you could do it yourself for free, that'll let you do that plot. So just like you go to the doctor and he'll look at every aspect of your health to give you a treatment plan or help you plan ahead. This benchmark, and Stephanie can get it to you, or we can get it to you through this webinar. Why not? It'll advance you. It'll teach you the math of growth. It'll help you understand your business. It'll help you understand where the drivers of growth in the business and where you should be spending your time to avoid the moles. So I think that is one of the resources and the how-tos that hopefully we can help you with.
Yeah, this is a terrific resource, and highly encourage people to take advantage of it. It is free, and it does give a lot of insights on how to go about putting this information into practice that we've talked about today. There it is.
And Stephanie, how do they get all this? Because I also think you should, pilot this revenue operating system. How do they get hold of us, or how do they take action on all this?
Yeah, they can email us. We'll also be following up after the webinar. But feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, and here's my email address, so you can reach out to me directly for more information on the platform that's X Factor offers, or Stephen's benchmark assessment.
I'll happily talk as well. I'm no smarter than anybody in this webinar in the audience, but I wrote a book, and you can say, see, I've been saying this, it's in the book. This bald guy says the same thing.
Exactly.
He looks like a professor, so he must be right.
Some people say Yoda.
Yoda.
All right, well, let's take a few moments for questions, because I do see a few here in the Q&A. So I want to make sure we get to those before we close the call. The first one is from Jennifer, wondering if there's other ways to incentivize KPI goals outside of compensation.
I will do anything for attention. So knowing people's motivators, like money actually isn't a huge, I love money, don't worry. But money comes to me very easily. So it's not like, ooh, let me do that for money. But what does light me up, attention, dinner with a lunch with the CEO, getting to go to a conference and not having to man the booth, right? Like things that are exclusive, merit-based experiences.
Again, I'm being crass. General Stanley McChrystal, who fought the terrorist war, basically from the military, says it's about common purpose. And I think if anyone here has played on a sports team, it's wonderful being on a good team. It's wonderful knowing that you're contributing. You don't have to score the goal. You can make the pass. You can defend the play, or just be in the right position as a decoy. And so, yes, I think the compensation thing is important, but people want to win. And if you can show them that they're contributing to winning, and that block or that pass or that that assist or that encouragement help them win, that's really the core motivation. I just put the compensation thing out there because if it really creates value, then why isn't everyone being rewarded for it?
Yeah, I agree with that, Stephen. It resonates a lot with me. And the way I like to approach things is, because sometimes I'll join a company where they have some lax processes, or they're not as organized as you would want, and it can be very hard to turn things around. But to your point, everybody does want to win, and if you can articulate how high performing teams operate and start to embody that and put that into practice, then it kind of elevates the way things get done. So that's just another way that I've done it, is like, hey, like, we want to be an elite sales organization. We want to be an elite go-to-market organization. So this is what we're going to have to do in order to move in that direction. Certainly compensation comes into play, with other things and the way that you drive certain goals across. But other ways is just, a new way of doing things.
We only have like 8 minutes left. Why don't I choose a question and answer it, and then you two choose a question and answer it, because we're getting some in.
Great.
So I'm going to take the next one from Jennifer K. What is your advice to one individual RevOps team where data hygiene can take over daily focus away from RevOps, but data hygiene is necessary for true insights? Hi, I've lived your life. Here's my unhelpful advice that might be actually helpful. The problem here isn't the data hygiene. There's something going on. If you can't get the data cleaned up, there's an interpersonal mess behind it. Either reps aren't respecting you, so what's going on there? Or you don't have the proper tooling, what's going on there? The sales leader doesn't have the respect of the sales team. There's something amiss, there's something awry if you can't solve the one thing. If this is truly your one thing, and it sounds like you've been dedicating a lot of time and resources, I would take a step back and look and like observe like what's actually going on here.
Could I just comment, because I think you made a good point. One, I think they're being unfair on data. Messy data can tell you something, because 90% of the assumptions that drive 100% of the resource allocation in the business are gut feel and undocumented. So you're competing with friggin' guesses. So they're holding data to the standard of perfection, because they're scared of the data. They don't understand the data. They can't live with messy data, yet they're totally comfortable. Come on, ask people, why do you have 10 sales reps? Why did you set that budget? It's gut feel. Now, for a frontline seller, that gut feel may be a lot of knowledge, but he should write it down, because until you understand the response curve of your business. So think about the competition. If you don't document guesses and adjust those guesses and document that gut feel, fight the competition. Second, that data is the most valuable asset in the business and start getting people to think about the monetization potential of that data, and maybe you get some budget to clean it up and make it better. But tell people what it means, because they're just guessing on the other side. If they don't even look at the data and say, hey, this is indicating something or another, they don't know how to look at the data. They don't know how to math the growth. But what else are they going to go on? Their instinct or what they did 20 years ago? So remember who the competition is: gut feel and dumb guesses.
Boom.
Yeah. All right, why don't I do I'll do the next one. This is from Shashiti. Advice to someone who wants to make the transition from sales to RevOps?
Join Rev Genius.
Yes.
I got to tell you something. My nephew was a cold caller. He was an athlete, and he didn't like it. He was good. He did it, but he didn't like it, and he became a CRM administrator. And I'm like, going from the front office to the back office, that's going to be tricky. He taught me a lot about RevOps, and he studied and did a lot of what we're talking about. He's had 4 promotions.
Yep.
In the last few years. Good looking guy too. He's my nephew. But I got to tell you something. My initial instinct was, you better be strategic as heck if you're going to do that. And he started as a CRM administrator, and he did a lot of what Jackie and Stephanie are talking about in this call. And his career path is on a great trajectory. And so, I think, you are making as big or bigger impact in RevOps on revenue as you would as a seller, but you got to come up with the math to prove that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Join some communities. There's Rev Genius, there's RevOps Co-op, there's WizOps. Those people will take care of you. And if you want, either with HubSpot or Salesforce, they both have online learning. For Salesforce, I think it's a little bit better. Go to Trailhead and do the beginner admin and just go. Just go.
Yep, great advice. That's how I got started. I was a
Mhm.
sales rep and a sales leader back in the day, and I did start sort of with the Salesforce admin side of things. They said, "Oh, Stephanie, you're really good at this reporting stuff. You know, you want to?" And sure enough, that's where life took me. So, okay, we have time for one more. Maybe let's go with this one. This one is from Jackie, do you want to read the next one? Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Oh, okay. So the next one, I'll read it, and then you two are going to have to answer it. I have spent so much time educating businesses as to the importance of allocating budget and resources to RevOps, especially at the over 10 million ARR where resources are, less than 10 million. Oh, it is for me, where resources are scarce. Do you have any tips for when unexpected outcomes of projects are guesstimates at the beginning? They're all guesstimates. They're all guesstimates, Claire.
Yeah.
Just put it in a spreadsheet and call it a scope.
What I would say to this is the companies under 10 million, even, should not live without RevOps, first of all, because getting that function into place early can help avoid a lot of really tangly issues down the road as the company grows. So setting it up early and getting a resource allocated, even if it's a team of one at the beginning, because there's ways to kind of multiply yourself through tools, technologies, and different strategies. But and then building from there and trying to get more resources as, again, you align on the North Stars, as you align on the initiatives, as you start to peel apart, like what is going to be required to get you there. It can really help you be organized about having those resourcing conversations.
Yeah, one last thing. For an owner of a business, CEO, it's intuitively easy to say, hire a salesperson and grow, spend more money on advertising and grow, buy software and grow. But you've already got software that's not being utilized, and salespeople who aren't hitting their quotas, and marketing that is not connected to sales. And so it's the proverbial, do you really need 15 cylinders on your car, or can you get 4 of them firing? And I think that's RevOps, and the finance is your weapon. If you can speak finance of growth better than your leadership, you're going to have a shot. I'm not discounting, what everyone said, but at the end of the day, they don't need shiny objects. And yeah, you could hire salespeople, but more than likely, you want to get another cylinder firing, and that's what RevOps is, and that's why it's so hard to fund. Everyone wants a new car.
New, the allure of new.
I think we're out of time, even though there are still a few more questions in the queue, but we can make sure to get those answered out after this and get back to the folks that put the questions in. But we want to just thank everybody for your time today and for joining us. Clearly, we love doing this, and we could talk all day about it. But we will let everyone get onto the rest of their day, but hope that we continue the conversation as we go forward. So thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jackie. Really appreciate your participation and your expertise today. Thank you.